Hey, I'm Alex Ratcliffe from Board Game Co., and today I'm reviewing Epochs Course of Cultures from Ice Makes. Epochs Course of Cultures is a 2 to 4 player civilization-based game. This is a prototype, all rules and components subject to change, and I'll have a link to the crowdfunding campaign down below. Also, fun fact, but Epochs is pronounced either Epic or Epoch depending on where you're from. I say that to avoid the inevitable correction from a very global audience. But with that said, this is a civilization-based game. You're going to be playing across 3 epics in the game, 3 epochs in the game, where you're going to go through rounds of building up your civilization, playing various tech cards, trying to build and grow your army, expand your civilization and its reach through various cities and, well, settlements and cities and all that, as you try to get as many points as possible by the end of the 3rd age of the game. To that end, the player aid, and this is a great player aid by the way, this really covers almost everything you need to know in a very simple form over here, but the basic structure of the turn is you're going to go ahead, first things first, you're going to have a hand of cards, and you're going to draw a card. It's already set up a little mid-game, so you can have a few things going on over here, but you're going to go ahead and draw a card from the tech tree over here. From the tech deck, you're going to be drawing from the next age. This won't be true in the last age. In age 3, you're not really drawing a card, but basically in age 1, you're drawing from age 2, in age 2, you're drawing from age 3. That's going to give you the information. You can't play these cards yet, but it'll give you the information as to what hand of cards you will be playing with in the next age. That's going to go into my hand over there, and that gives me the tools to know a bit more towards what my options are as far as what I'm planning for, because you're going to start the game with 6 age 1 cards. There'll also be a shared market of 4 cards over here, which will explain how those work in a second. But again, first things first, you draw a card into your hand. The next thing you're going to do is you're going to reveal one of the cards from this deck over here, although 2 cards in a 2-player game, but otherwise 1 card. You're going to flip it over. We have the Great Pyramid of Giza, which is going to go into the Wonder row. If it was a unit, we're going to the Military row, but it goes into 1 row, and the cards push up over there. Then you're going to go ahead and pick one of the areas in the map that's unrevealed, if there are any, and you're going to go ahead and reveal it, and you do have to follow certain matching rules. We won't heavily get into them, but there are certain rules around matching terrains. If able, we would put a barbarian camp down over there, and then we go ahead and put any other tokens that we need to on the board, match terrains if necessary, and reveal a tile over there. And then from there, you're going to go ahead and you're going to remove any maintenance cost on your units, which is something that's only been relevant if your units have activated, if they've prepped for defense effectively. And the last thing you're going to do, the most common thing you're going to do, is you're going to take either one play of a civilization card, of a technology card, followed by an action, or you can go ahead and give up one of these cards and take 2 actions. The way that works is you look at your hand of cards from this age, and you play one of those cards. And you can play one from your hand, or you can go ahead and play one into the market and play that card from the market instead. Meaning if you're ever stuck with cards in your hand that don't work for you, there is a shared market of cards that will be rotating between the players as they choose to take advantage of that, giving up various cards that didn't work for them, but you might use on your next turn. Or alternatively, you just play a card down entirely in the market, covering a pre-existing card, and then you go ahead and take 2 actions on your turn instead of 1 action. Now those actions are all covered nicely on your player board over here. You have a list of the actions, but without going heavily into detail on them, the actions all have a cost, which you can see over here, different types of the 4 resources in the game. You're going to go ahead and spend those resources next to the action cost and take that action. This action lets you take one of your cubes over here, putting it out onto the board. So you can start spreading your civilization on the board, going ahead and spreading the distance. Your first cube can go anywhere. After that, you have to go adjacent to wherever you built. There are various technologies or things that will let you spread a little further, but that's the basic idea of that action. Then over here, you have an upgrade your city action, where if you have an intersection, let's go ahead and pretend we have an intersection over here. Let's pretend we have this situation. Well, we can't. Let's go ahead and pretend we've conquered that civilization over there. We've gotten that. If you have an intersection of 3 of these settlements, you can go ahead and put one of your cities onto the board. The settlements stay there, they don't get lost, but you go ahead and put a settlement onto the board. Again, certain rules around edge of water or edge of the board or things like that, but in general, a connected group of those is going to put those out. And the reason those are helpful is because you're going to go ahead and up your trading track over there for building a city, and additionally, they're worth 4 points at the end of the game compared to the 1 point that these are all worth at the end of the game. That's going to be the next action. From there, you can also go ahead and build a trade route. You can go ahead and put one of your things into a friendly or neutral, into an enemy city or a neutral city, another player or a neutral city, and you can go ahead and bump up your track by 2 when you do that, paying the resources, and again, certain rules around the exact way they work, or the fact that you can't do that as a warmonger, certain things we're not going to heavily go into, but effectively you're building out your trade routes in the cities and helping boost this track, which is going to be your income at the end of the round, and those income directly translate into points. From there, you can go ahead and raise the tech track. You can pay the amount of tech shown over there, paying that from your pool, returning it to the supply. And again, these all have costs. You can look at the various costs over there. You're going to bump this up, and you're going to cover one of these and take one of these bonuses. So for example, I might take 2 food and 1 culture, grabbing 2 food from the supply, and gathering a culture, moving my culture up by 1 and advancing on that track. As this moves up, the cost gets higher, but so does the reward, giving you more stuff you can do for your science trading in the game. Then you have have over here, you have the ability to upgrade your units. You're going to pay whatever science cost you need. Pick a unit from over here. You can have up to one main unit and one support unit. These are going to be main units. These will be support units. So a little symbol over there. And you're going to have up to those 2 units. I should note the way these boards are structured. There's specific places to put your technology cards and your military and wonder cards. But I just have them over here for the sake of being able to see it all. But you can go ahead and have one of each unit type in the game. So for example, I can buy a mountain warrior, which will help me because I have a lot of mountains over here. So having mountain warriors over here is going to help me. I'm going to up my my military combat over here, but I also have 2 advantages in mountains. So over here, that means any combats that take place in mountains, I'm going to be rolling 2 extra dice. Effectively, when it comes to combat, and we'll cover this more when we get to it, when it comes to combat, you have your core strength, and then you have the ability to roll dice to augment your strength. Advantages give you more room to roll dice in the game, which is why it's helpful to have certain types of advantages, whether defending a city, whether on the defense in general, whether you're on the attack, or certain terrain types, or even against certain types of units. You will have the ability to earn a bunch of advantages in the game on this track over here. From there, you also have the ability, this is kind of a cash-in bonus over here. Depending on your government, you have the ability to get certain resources. This is not an ability you want to use a lot, but sometimes in a pinch, it can give you what you need. Speaking of governments, you have the ability to move up your government. There's a whole government track over here. You're going to start down here, and you have the ability to move up effectively. So whenever you go up, you go here, you can go to any one of these. If I go here, I can go to over here or over here. There's little arrows connecting those spots, but basically you have governments which give you advantages, allow you to have more cities, and give you immediate benefits when you move with the government. But you have to have least amount of culture up to that row. So to move to your first level government, you have to have at least 2 culture, then 8, then 14 to be able to move up these tracks. And then lastly, you have the ability to build a wonder. Building a wonder is going to cost you whatever the cost of the wonder is, which are usually fairly higher. You know, on the low end you have 3, over here we have something for 6 over here. Those wonders, and they get even higher and higher ages. But over here, you're going to have the ability to get a wonder, and that's going to give you various in-game bonuses or end-game bonuses, as well as one-time bonuses. So for example, if I build the Great Pyramid of Giza, I go ahead and I get 3 culture, I get another one of these cubes. So basically, these cubes over here, you have a limited number of cubes in the game that you have access to in the game, a number of cities, number of cubes, but you can earn more by upgrading your government, by upgrading wonders, things like that will give you the ability to spread your civilization further. So I get 3 culture and 1 more little settlement cube. Additionally, at the end of the game, I'm going to get 1 point for every 2 gold, giving me the ability to cash in even further. That's not gold, that's for every presence on sand, my bad. For every presence on sand in the game, so that gives you more ways to score points or more in-game benefits. Now again, you're only taking one of these actions. Every single round you're going to be playing, across each age, you're going to have 6 turns. Within each of those 6 turns, you're playing 1 technology and 1 action, or alternatively, giving up a technology play to get a second action. So you can play as many as 12 actions in a round, although more commonly I'd say you're probably playing between 4 to 6 technologies, and then between 6 to 8 actions I'd say is more common, but obviously the way you choose to approach the game will give you different ways to approach the game. That's going to be the core idea of how you play through a main turn. But at the end of your turn, you have the ability to deal with whatever the combat phase is. Now the combat phase is going to give you the ability to pay for your units. You have to pay the maintenance costs to effectively rally your army, and if you don't do that, your army strength is 0. So this is not just an offensive ploy, it's also a defensive ploy in the game. Because if I don't pay for my military units upkeep at the end of my turn, then other units can, other people on the board, other players can attack my units, my cities, and my units will not contribute to their defense. So there is a constant upkeep game of when do you think an enemy is close enough that they might actually be able to do something negative to you versus when it's not worth paying that upkeep cost. How much of a Cold War are you playing here as you play defensively? The flip side of that is because you're starting to upgrade units, you might want to take advantage of the fact that you can then go ahead and conquer various things. You can conquer various barbarians, you can conquer neutral cities, or you can fight other players themselves. Now to that end, combat, I'm going to loosely go into how it works. I won't heavily go into it, but there's a few key things to note. There's general combat against either warmongers or barbarian villages, and then there's combat against other players and neutral cities, and the difference between those two are effectively whether you are a warmonger, whether you are an offensive player. There's costs in the game to being a warmonger. You're going to lose points you're going to lose culture every single round, but you're also going to lose your ability to have your trading network in other players' cities, so you have to effectively remove your networks from other cities as soon as you become a warmonger. Turns out in this game, nobody actually does like you if you are mean to other people. So there is a bit of a cost and a structure there. The upside is if you attack other players, you can only do so by being a warmonger, so you have to kind of do that mental trade-off of, is it worth effectively declaring to the rest of the people at the table that you are prepared to attack them, but that you can also go ahead and bluff them. I'm just doing it so I can attack that neutral city. No one's going to believe you. No one's going to believe you. But you could go ahead and do that. So there is a bit of a military aspect both for just trying to defend yourself or attack others. And again, keep in mind, as a non-warmonger, you can attack a warmonger player without any downside. So as soon as one person at your table sits there and says, I'm going to go ahead and attack you, it kind of gives everyone else the military strength or room for actually going ahead on the offensive against that player without the same cost to themselves. So this whole warmonger phase is an interesting aspect of the game. As far as how combat actually works, you're going to go ahead and add up the strength of your units. That's going to be the core strength of your unit, the core strength of any supporting unit. So let's say I had an archer over here, you can add the strength of the archer. You also get benefits if you have matching unit types as far as their structures. This over here is a military formation, military formation, military formation. If you have matching military formations between your units, you'll get an additional benefit. And then you have the advantage of rolling dice. You always roll 1 dice plus 1 for each advantage you have. So right now for myself, my core strength would be 3, but I would roll 1 die in a regular combat and 3 dice in any combat in a mountainous region. So I can go ahead and roll these dice. There's 1, 2, 3, 4, and then 2 blanks. And that was a abysmally bad roll. My mountain warriors are about to die, even in the mountains, unfortunately. That is an abysmally bad roll. It's 2 zeros and a 1. It could barely be worse. But that's basically the way combat's going to work in the game. Now, the strength of a barbarian village is 3, so you have to get at least 4 to win against a barbarian village, at least 7 to win against a neutral city. Those are the white cities on the board that give you something to think about as far as your trade network, or just your ability to go after them in the game. And then the other units are going to be the strength of whatever player you're fighting against. I should note there's also an ability to roll more dice. You get an advantage as well for having friendly regions around your city. So the more well fortified your city is, effectively players have to choose between attacking you one at a time to slowly take down your defensive structures around you, or alternatively, you have more defense because of them. So there is that trade-off in military combat. And that's basically the way a turn plays out. Again, on your turn, you go through a step of actions. You're going to draw a card from the check tree. You're going to replace a card in this row, or put a card in this row, sometimes replacing, sometimes just adding. You're going to go ahead and reveal a tile if there are unrevealed tiles. Then you'll go ahead and either play 1 technology card and 1 action, or play 2 actions and give up 1 technology card. From there, you'll go into the military phase where you choose to pay your military upkeep and then go through any form of military conquest you want. Now, there is no, you might be wondering, there's no units on the board. You don't have various, horsemen or archers, nothing you're marching around this board. It's all based around adjacency to the region you have on the board, which is also something you take into account when you choose to worry about other players and the upkeep cost. If you see other players are not close enough to you to be able to attack you, you don't have to go on that defensive play just yet in the game. So it's not about actual military marching around the board, it's around your adjacency to people on the map with the ability to have some abilities, some units that might be able to go ahead and bypass certain regions or attack over the sea or things like that. When you've done 6 turns, you're going to go to the end of an age. Now, the end of the age is going to have you doing a few things. You're going to be removing any resources, converting extra resources to gold in the game. You're going to be getting various painting things, these little painting tiles for having the most culture each round. There's a few cleanup things that'll give you some points. Repeat that, and then there's clean up all the cards and stuff like that. Do that for 3 ages, and at the end of the game, you'll get points for your culture in the game, for your cities and settlements on the board. You'll get points for how many of the little painting markers you got, and again, you get those for having the most culture, but you also get those for various tracks over here, or various wonders, or things like that. You're going to get points for every 2 gold you have. There's also military conquest, these little shield tokens you give up to other players when they attack you and win. Those are worth a point. You add up all your points and see who won in Epochs Course of Cultures. That is basically how to play the game. A few small things to get into, but for the most part, that should give you a good idea of how the game plays. Which means it's time for my review, starting off with ease of play, and they actually get starting off good points on that one. The rulebook for this game, or the ease of understanding how to play this game, for a civilization-based game, this is one of the easiest civilization-based experiences that I have ever learned to play. Now, that does come at a cost. I will say, again, prototype, I'm dealing with a prototype rulebook. There were a lot of areas in the game where I wish there was more clarity, and I had to basically make a judgment call as to what an ability meant or what a technology card meant. For the most part, I think I made the right calls. It is mostly intuitive. I wish they had had some sort of reference sheet or something, but they didn't. But again, prototype, so there is that grain of salt there. But that not grain of salt, but I think taken into account. Hopefully the final game has all that. But as far as the rules themselves, they're fairly straightforward. It is a really easy civilization game to pick up and play. It's very straightforward, and this sheet over here really gives you almost all the information you need to know. I would say this is one of the easiest civilization games I've ever played. Possibly the one that might be easier than this is actually Age of Civilization from the same designer, although that one's a lot more abstracted in what it does. It's a smaller box game. It's much more abstracted. This really gives you more of that. It's not a fully fleshed, like this is not a giant, Sid Meier's Civilization or Through the Ages or Clash of Cultures. It's not one of those kinds of experiences, but it is close and fairly straightforward to learn from there. Game time can vary. This game can be prone to AP prone players. We'll get more into that throughout the review, but I'd say that generally you're looking at in the range of 90 minutes for a short game and up to 2.5 hours for a more standard game in there. Again, I think 2 hours is a more reasonable number, but it can creep across 3 ages, across all the decisions you're making, especially at a 3 or 4 player experience. This can run to the two hours plus range. As far as what I like, don't like, and can see others not liking, starting off with the fact that the rules are fairly straightforward relative to the game weight. Meaning over here, it's not that this is a very, very easy game to learn, but for what the game experience is, this is one of the more straightforward games to learn in the genre. Also, there's a lot of fun things going on here. There's tech cards over here. All these tech cards, one thing I haven't talked about, but when you play a tech card, you're going to get the resource over here, and so is the player to your left, but then you also you personally get whatever's down this card, which sometimes are one-time effects, sometimes they're ongoing effects, things that will happen, but the ability to slowly grow your tech tree across those 3 rounds of play, having up to 18 cards in play that will all give you different abilities. Again, sometimes they're one-time abilities, but other times you're building up your tableau, and at first it might not be so impactful. Oh, when I build a city here, I get a resource. And that might not be such a big deal. But when you combine that with the fact that you're going to have all these wonders that will give you various abilities, and look at this, over here we now have the Hanging Gardens. Now we can build the city at cost of 1 less. Over here we're going to go ahead and get one when we do that. Something else is going to give us a point every time we build a city. Over here, City of Light. We unlock our civilization ability over here, and you can go ahead and get resources and culture whenever you build cities. Suddenly you have a different engine that's being built and developed every single time you play. The combination of tech cards, the civilizations, the tech cards, the wonders, and the civilizations all give you a lot of variability to the engine that you're building, and it's a very satisfying and yet straightforward engine, but it allows for a lot of variability between all this stuff over here. There's just a ton of things going on in the game as far as just, well, everything happening over here. Additionally, you're prepping for the next age. One of the things I like in the game is you have these cards that are entering your hand as you go, and so you have the ability to be like, ooh, okay, fine. Okay, that's going to work with me. Oh, okay, fine. That's going to be nice. And so you have this ability over here. We're going to be getting at the end of the game, we're going to have 2 points if we have 6+ on this track over here. There's 2 different tracks you're trying to bump up over here, and at the end of the round, you're going to get income based on the lower of these 2 indicators. But look at this. I suddenly get points if I have at least 6 over here, and suddenly there's something to work towards in the game. These cards, and the fact that you get these cards as you play, give you things to work for in the game, and that I like that sense of planning that's present in the game. I like the fact that military is present in the game. I think games like this often do benefit from a military degree of presence, but I also like the fact that it is abstracted to a degree. It makes it a little simpler to actually run and deal with. It is a little confusing and not, well, we'll talk more about the military stuff soon, but there's pros and cons on the military. I like how straightforward and abstracted it is. I like the overall experience that's being given here. The accessibility, the government track, I haven't talked about that. The ability to move up these government trees over here and have different benefits for your government as you go up. All of that is very satisfying to go through and choose, like, ooh, this game I'm going to try to go for autocracy over here. And there's a ton of different pathways you can choose, which really gives you different ways to build this game every single time. This set of abilities, and again, the player aids and just all the information you have here makes this a very simple, very simple, but relative to the type of game it is, a very simple game with a lot of variability and a lot of fun daisy chaining of abilities. Again, the tech trees are just, you will not see all the cards every single game, and so the combination of cards that you do have access to and the way you build out your tech tree is really going to drive a different experience as far as what your competitive advantage is every single time you play. Now, there are a few things I don't like in the game. First of all, I'll say that I wish the civ text, as much as I like all the stuff happening in the game, I wish the civilization text generally felt stronger. For the most part, the way these work, I haven't talked with them, but twice in the game, you have these cubes over here, you can pay the cost, and you can bump up any 2 of your civilization's text. Now, I do like the fact that you have to pick and choose. It means you can't always get everything. You have to choose what's going to work for your engine every time, and there are a variety of civilizations in the game, but I also think a lot of them didn't feel particularly strong. Some of them are just like, hey, get a few resources, which is nice, but I wish my text felt a little cooler than that. So overall, the variability of having different civilizations and different pathways to choose and different ways to augment your engine, I definitely appreciated that. I do wish I felt a little bit cooler around, hey, I'm playing as France this game, and France has these really cool abilities. I almost want those to feel a bit more OP. There were things in the game that felt OP, overpowered, but not really the civilization text, at least for me. I'll say that combat in the game, as much as I appreciate the abstracted nature of combat, the whole concept of the warmonger kind of really made, at least in our games, the concept of the warmonger and the way that penalizes you in the game kind of meant that early game combat just didn't really happen in our games at all, and even late game combat only happened in some games. This is one of those games where And it could be we're not playing it optimally. I'll be very straightforward. Could be that really you should go heavy on combat and it's just worth it. But it kind of felt like combat wasn't as worthwhile in the game experience to engage with, and it happened kind of, well, less often. It was a necessary thing to deal with because of barbarian camps. I didn't really mention this, but these are going to steal gold from you every round if they're next to your cities, so you have to be mindful of that. But it felt like a necessary thing to invest in a little bit, but it wasn't something we heavily engaged with. And the last thing I'll say is that for the 2-player experience, I felt the 2-player experience was a little bit weak relative to the 3 or 4-player games. The 2-player experience has 2 main issues with it. First of all, combat's very direct against the other players. That's the one area where combat almost does feel like it might be a bit more worth it, but it also feels like it might be a bit more mean because it's less of the incentive of the other players being able to attack you. It's just you versus them. So if you build up that lead competitively, that can be, like, again, still didn't happen. The 1-2-player game I played still didn't happen, but that's more because it felt like it would be mean and confrontational, but it felt like it might be tactically the right thing to do to go a bit more aggressive on combat in a 2-player experience. Then also things like the fact that when you play a civilization card, everyone's getting those bonuses, because it's not like player to your left, it's everyone, which that's another thing as well we'll get into with other players Concealed's not liking. We'll talk about that soon. That's kind of the overall areas I didn't like about the experience. Speaking of things I can see others not liking though, going to a higher player count, one of the things you might run into at a higher player count is when you play one of these cards, you get the bonus and the player to your left, which a small little nitpick here, but that does mean that if you have a player who's going with a lot more double actions and they're giving up their attacks, not only are they choosing and impacting their own engine, but they're hurting you too. Not the entire table, they're hurting specifically one other player at the table is being penalized in the sense that they're not getting those extra things. I don't know how well balanced it is around the game experience, but it felt a little odd. I'll say that the map exploration felt, again, a little abstracted. Because you don't have units who are wandering onto new tiles to explore them, it means players are literally just choosing a tile and flipping it over, which again, there's certain rules around how the structure in, but that does mean that when you have that, it just feels a little, again, abstracted. That might be something you don't appreciate as much. And then in general, I'll say that the balance of the game, I can't speak for the balance at all. I did appreciate how you can have these nice overpowered combinations going on. I will say there was one card in particular in one game that felt like a combination of things was very strong without getting too much into it. It's this philosophy card right here. It kind of gives you the ability to get an early government upgrade right off the bat, and being able to get your cube into Republic on the first turn as you're spreading cities and get double spreading of cities. That just felt like a very powerful combination overall. And I will say, for a full disclaimer's sake, that again, I'm kind of assuming what all the abilities mean based on the iconography. I'm not 100% certain of them. But overall, I'll say philosophy is the only time that something felt a little OP past that. But a game like this, I can't speak for balance. I have not played this game nearly enough times to be able to say, oh, this strategy is that or this. There entirely might be balance issues. For me personally, I find that doesn't tend to bother me at first. I like exploring games, and if eventually there is a clear dominant strategy, that will affect my long-term enjoyment of the game, but at least in the short term, things felt like you could build nice engines. Not a problem for me, but I'm just not speaking on balance about the game in general. As far as final thoughts on the experience, this is one of those times where a number won't represent the whole story. Practically speaking, I'm giving this one a 3.5 out of 5, but instinctively I wanted it to go higher. I like the game a lot and what it's doing. There's just some areas that I don't know if they'll be adjusted or changed from prototype to final game, but I do feel like some areas that can be cleaned up a bit. From the way combat operates to the 2-player mode, things like that, I really like the core idea of what's going for. It feels like a streamlined civilization game that for the most part doesn't compromise on the main things that make it a civilization game. There's a lot here that I enjoyed. I really enjoyed the tech trees and building that out. I enjoyed-ish the map. I feel like, again, it's weird because some civilization games will give you more of a map to care about. This one, I don't know. I don't know. Overall, there are many things in this package of a game that I enjoyed, had fun with, and would eagerly look into diving in again to be able to try more combinations. At the same time, there are areas where it still feels like the things could be cleaned up a bit, which is why I'm giving it that 3.5 out of 5. I do hope that it's one that grows over time with me, or grows with the final game, depending on how things are changed, but for right now, it's a 3.5 out of 5. As far as other game recommendations, first of all, I'm going to recommend Age of Civilization, from the same creator, Age of Civilization, which some elements of this game do seem to be built off of, like even this government tree over here and the way this track operates, as well as the sheer combination of abilities in the game. I think Age of Civilization is one of the best, if not the best, small box civilization game that really gives you a very good experience for the amount of cost, shelf space, all of that in a game. And if you're looking for a fully fledged civilization game, I think Through the Ages is the best one I know. An absolute amazing experience that really distills it just down to the cards and the way you build your engine, and kind of ignores the whole map aspect, abstracting everything down to the card play, but it does an incredibly good job at that card play. Until next time, I'm Alex Radcliffe from Board Game Co. I hope you found this video helpful, and as always, I hope you have a good one.